I think it is safe to assume that everyone attending this retreat, either in person or from home, has been on some kind of a spiritual path before coming here. And I'd like to say something, especially to those of you that are new or here for the first time, to help you put your previous practice, or it may still be your practice, your current practice, in the context of the approach we take here, to help you to reconcile the two. And especially to see that there is no conflict between these diverse approaches, but they are all part of a broader picture, a broader approach, and that all the approaches are valid according to the understanding, or the level of understanding on which they are spoken. So if we were to survey the last 3,000 years of the spiritual and religious traditions, we could break them down into three distinct categories. The first approach, the progressive path, the vast majority of approaches fall into this category. It's a very wide and diverse category. The second approach, the direct path, much less diverse, much more specific. And the third approach, the pathless path. And each of these approaches or pathways have a body of teaching that is associated with them, and also usually a meditation practice. And the meditation practice that characterizes the progressive path, I should say first of all that the progressive path and direct paths both start with a presumption of separation. They both presume or address the separate self that we seem to be. The pathless path makes no such presumption. But the first two paths, the progressive path and the direct path, are addressed to the individual, the person, the separate self, the finite mind, the ego that we seem to be. The meditation practice that accompanies the progressive path could be called objective meditation. That is, meditation on an object of experience. And by object of experience in this case, I don't necessarily mean a physical object, although it may be such. It could be an object such as a mantra, or the breath, or the image of a flame, or indeed a candle flame, or the open sky, or the image of a deity, the image of a teacher, and so on. All of these are objects of experience which which in this meditation practice we direct our attention towards. So let's take just one example, mantra meditation, where we give our attention to a sound that we repeat internally. The sound is the object of experience, and we direct our attention to it. It's helpful in this context to understand what is meant by attention. Attention from the two Latin words a, meaning to or towards, and tendere, meaning to stretch, implying that when we pay attention to something, we, so to speak, stretch ourselves towards that thing. So attention it always proceeds from its source to the object. The source of attention is pure awareness. The object of attention, in this case, is the mantra. So attention is always involves a stretching from one point to another, like a rubber band, that in order to stretch a rubber band there must be 2 points. Attention is the same. In order to pay attention to something, we must direct the light of awareness towards that thing. So in objective meditation we direct awareness, stretch awareness towards the object, in this case the mantra. And in doing so we take our attention off the thoughts, images, feelings, perceptions and so on that we were previously attending to. In other words, instead of paying attention to 10,000 things, we now pay attention to one thing. And this focusing or directing of the attentions steadies the mind. It disengages the mind from all its previous interests and all the thoughts and feelings and actions and relationships in which the mind was previously involved. So the mind is steadied, gathered and steadied on a single object. And this brings with it, of course, a measure of peace. In time, in this case, as the mantra fades, the idea is that attention begins to subside back into its source. But invariably, through force of habit, the mind goes back to its old habits of paying attention to thoughts, feelings, sensations and perceptions. So we start up the mantra again. So in the second type of... The reason this is, just to go back, the reason that this is called the progressive path, or the indirect path, is because it is a pathway that takes us from the self that we seem to be to the self that we ultimately are. But it does so indirectly. It goes via the object, via the mantra in this case. The second path, the direct path, does not involve the directing of attention, the stretching of awareness towards an object. On the contrary, it involves the relaxation of attention, the subsidence of attention. If you have a rubber band that is stretched between 2 points, what happens to the rubber band when one of the points disappears? When the rubber band is no longer fixed at the second point, it is only fixed at the first point. The rubber band springs back to its natural unstretched or relaxed condition. Or what happens to attention when it is no longer directed to or focused on an object? It doesn't spring back, but it slowly subsides back into its source, its natural, relaxed condition. The fact of being aware or awareness itself. So sometimes this path is described as the inversion of attention, the turning around of attention. Instead of directing our attention towards the object, the attention turns round and is directed back towards the self. This is a legitimate way of speaking, but it's a little confusing. It's a misnomer. Why? Because we cannot really attend to ourself. Because in order to attend to something, as I previously suggested, we must stretch ourself from ourself. We must stretch the light of awareness from ourself to the object. In other words, we can only attend to something other than ourself. We are too close to ourself. We, awareness, are too close to ourself to be able to attend to ourself. We cannot stretch ourself from ourself to ourself because there is no distance from ourself to ourself. The sun can shine its light on everything in the universe apart from itself. It cannot shine its light on itself because it can only shine on its light on something that is at a distance from it. It is too close to itself to be able to shine its light on itself. However, the sun does not need to shine its light on itself. It does not need to turn around and cease shining its light on the moon and begin instead to shine its light on itself, because the sun illuminates itself just by being itself. It does not have to do anything. To illuminate the moon, it has to do something. It has to shine its light or direct its light on the moon. But in order to illuminate itself, it need only be itself. And the sun is always being itself and is always therefore illuminating itself. It illuminates itself just by being itself. For exactly the same reason, we, awareness, cannot attend to ourself. We can only attend to something that is at an apparent distance from ourself. We can shine the light of awareness, or awareness can shine its own light, its own knowing light, on an object of experience, but it cannot shine its light on itself. It is too close to itself, but nor need it shine its light on itself. Because in just the same way that the sun illuminates itself just by being itself, so Awareness knows itself just by being itself. It does not have to do anything to know itself. The sun does not have to do anything to illuminate itself because its nature is illumination or light. Awareness does not have to do anything to know itself because its nature is pure knowing. It knows itself simply by being itself. However, as a concession to one who is accustomed to attending almost continuously to objects, it is legitimate to say, instead of attending to objects, attend to yourself. The teaching is addressing the separate self that we seem to be. Okay, you think you are a separate self. Instead of attending to 10,000 things, attend to the self that you really are. The self that shines in you as the knowledge I am, or the fact of being aware. So it is a legitimate concession to suggest to the separate self, the apparently separate self that we seem to be, attend to yourself. But the reason I take care to explain this is when we hear the suggestion, attend to yourself, the tendency is to turn around and start looking for ourself to attend to. Everything that we attend to is some kind of an object of experience. So if we hear the suggestion, attend to yourself, we begin to look for ourself as a subtle object of experience. And this is a mistake. We are the one that is looking. We can never be an object that we are looked for. So more accurate than saying attend to yourself would be to say relax the focus of your attention. Allow your attention to sink backwards, inwards, selfwards, into its source. This is the direct path. Why? Because we go directly from wherever we are in experience, whatever we are thinking, feeling, experiencing, we go directly from there back to ourself, the source of attention, pure awareness. We don't take the intermediary step of going via an object, such as a mantra, the breath, the flame, and so on. This direct path is still addressed to the separate self. It says to the separate self, the apparently separate self, instead of attending to 10,000 things, the objects of experience, attend to the subject of experience. Instead of attending to the known, attend to the knower. What is it that knows, observes, witnesses, is aware of the content of experience? Attend to that. In objective meditation, attention proceeds from the subject to the object. In subjective meditation, the direct path, attention subsides from the object into the subject. So attention is like a two-way street. It can be followed outwards towards objective experience, thoughts, images, feelings, sensations, perceptions, or it can be traced back inwards towards its source, the subject, pure awareness or pure consciousness. Now this direct path approach or subjective meditation is sometimes called self-inquiry, self-investigation. And it is very often initiated by a question such as, what is it that knows or is aware of your experience? This question invites the mind away from whatever it is that it is aware of, back towards that which is aware. So this question invites attention to sink or relax backwards into its source. And there are many such questions. What is it that remains consistently present throughout the three states of waking, dreaming, and sleeping? What is it that cannot be removed from me? Or what is it that is always with me? To whom does my experience appear? It appears to me. What is this me? This I? Who am I, really? All these questions are variations of a single question, a single sacred question, whose purpose is to invite the mind away from its content, back to its essence or source. The question can be formulated in different ways, but all these different formulations are variations of the same question. This sacred question, sacred because it is the one question that invites the mind backwards, inwards, selfwards, into its essence, its source, the reality from which it emerges. Zen koans would come into this category. What is, but does not exist. These These koans are designed, spontaneously designed, to precipitate this immediate, direct recognition of the source or essence of the mind, pure consciousness. Sometimes the direct path is initiated not by a question, but by a line of reasoning. I am not my thoughts, I am that which knows my thoughts. I am not my feelings or sensations, I am that which is aware of my feelings and sensations. I am nothing that I perceive in the world, I am that which perceives. In this way we use a line of reasoning to trace our way, not quite as directly as we do with a Zen koan, but slowly, backwards, inwards, selfwards. All these questions, these lines of reasoning, they all take the mind from the object to the subject. And then there's the third path, the pathless path, and the accompanying meditation, namely non-meditation. The accompanying practice, namely non-practice. This is where we started last night. Here, in this third approach, we do not start with the presumption of separation and work directly or indirectly back to our true nature. We start with our true nature, and we stay there. So the teaching that accompanies the progressive path, or rather the teachings that accompany the progressive path, are numerous and varied, very broad. The teachings that accompany the direct path are much more narrow, less flexibility, less pathways. But the teaching that accompanies the pathless path is really not a teaching. Our true nature of simply being aware, or awareness itself, does not require any teaching. It does not require any practice in order to be or know itself. To put these three pathways in the context of the metaphor of the marketplace and the mountain, the progressive path starts in the marketplace and provides numerous pathways up the mountain, and each pathway meanders slowly up the mountain, stopping off at various places on the way up, various refuges, little huts on the way up. The direct path starts, if not in the marketplace, somewhere halfway up the slope, and just proceeds directly to the top of the mountain, irrespective of any obstacles that may lie in the way. And then the pathless path starts on top of the mountain and stays there. In other words, what is the goal of the progressive and direct paths? Is the origin of the pathless path. The place where the progressive paths and direct paths end is the place where the pathless path starts. In the progressive path and the direct path, we start as the person we seem to be, and we progress more or less directly to our true nature. So it is appropriate that there are some instructions, some suggestions. Pay attention to a mantra. Watch yourself while you're eating and walking. Pay attention to the breath. What is it that is aware of your experience? There are suggestions, pathways, practices that are given to us. These are all concessions to the separate self that we seem to be. But in the pathless path, no such concession is made. We start with being. Being aware, or awareness itself. And being does not need any instructions as to how to be. Being is just being's natural, effortless condition. It does not have to do anything to be. In other words, on the progressive and direct paths, the separate self is what we are considered to be. And meditation is what we, as that separate self, do. On the Pathless Path, meditation is understood to be what we are. And the separate self is understood to be an activity that we do, namely thinking, feeling, sensing and perceiving. It is in this context that Ramana Maharshi said, "Don't meditate, just be." Even that statement makes a concession, albeit a very small one, to the separate self we seem to be. After all, being does not need to be told to be. And that is why the highest teaching is no teaching at all. That is why if we want to make absolutely no concession to the separate self that we seem to be, we remain silent. many of us will not be able to remain simply being for long. The old habit of seeking something or doing something will prevail and pull our attention away from ourselves towards the content of experience, and we will find ourselves involved again in thinking, feeling, imagining, perceiving, and so on. And if this is the case, we should just gently make whatever effort is required to come back to ourself. Although our essential nature of simply being is effortless, it does not need to be practiced. Nevertheless, for one who is temporarily lost in the content of experience, it will be necessary to make an effort to come back to simply being, in which case we should make the effort. We have been practicing, paying attention almost exclusively to the content of experience for decades. And as a result, there is a very strong habit in us that continually pulls us away from ourselves towards the content of experience. And except in extremely rare cases, this habit of being exclusively involved in the content of experience is not broken with one glimpse or recognition of our true nature. In the vast majority of cases, for all intents and purposes, all cases, one such glimpse or recognition weakens the habit of paying exclusive attention to the content of experience, but does not get rid of it. Repeated such glimpses or recognitions are required. And each time we come back to ourselves, this habit of paying exclusive attention to or being almost continually lost in experience gradually diminishes. And as this habit diminishes, we find it easier and easier to remain simply being until it becomes truly effortless. In fact, we may find that at some point, remaining as we are, being, simply being, has become so natural and effortless that there may be some reluctance to return to the content of experience, in which case we will need to make an effort to do so. Previously, we had to make an effort to return to ourself. Now we have to make an effort to return to experience. In other words, for most people, being lost in the content of experience is our natural condition, and as such requires no effort. Whereas returning to our true nature of simply being is a special experience that requires effort and practice. At some point this changes. Our true nature of simply being is understood and, more importantly, felt as our natural condition. And experience, thinking, feeling, sensing and perceiving, is now seen to require some effort. In this case, meditation has ceased to be something we do. It is now just what we are, simply being.